Hi, this is Mike Young with Noble Warriors. You're about to hear a message entitled Protecting Your Marriage, presented by me, Mike Young, Director of Noble Warriors from Midlothian, Virginia. This workshop was presented as part of the Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Conference, hosted by Noble Warriors at Bonsack Baptist Church in Roanoke, Virginia, on Saturday, February 23, 2013. I pray the message will challenge and encourage you as you walk with Christ and lead your family. I'm supposed to introduce myself. My name is Mike Young. I'm here at Bonsack today, and for Iron Sharpens Iron, I'm doing a seminar called Protecting Your Marriage. So, how many of you have been married? Stacy and I, let me just tell you my story. My wife is out there working at the CD sales table. We've been married for 20 years last June, so we're working on our 21st year. Got 4 kids. 3 boys are 17, 14, and 12, and a little girl that's 8. So we've just got a busy family. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a bit of a story. My son is at a state track meet in Hampton right now. He's not running. He's got kind of the wonderful assignment of being an alternate runner to state track meet. So he's so excited because the school paid for him to go and paid for his meals, and he doesn't have to run. So he was going to eat as much as he wanted to, and pray that nobody broke an ankle so he didn't throw up all the waffles that he ate this morning. My 14-year-old actually finished up today serving as a page for the House of Delegates in the General Assembly. So that's been kind of a fun experience. So when we get home tonight, we will finally all be together again for a while. My 12-year-old was playing in a basketball game this morning. I haven't heard from him how that went. And the 8-year-old is probably telling somebody what to do because that's what she does most of the time. So that's kind of the environment that we live in. And it's just busy. I don't know, how many of you have teenage kids and you've got active and things are just moving all over the place? It's amazing how much you have to keep up with. So we'll talk about protecting your marriage. Let's pray our way into this. Lord, thank you for this time. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to be in this room together, to sharpen each other, and to learn a little bit from your word about how to be stronger men in our marriage. God, we need to protect our marriage with some boundaries, but we also need to protect our marriage by making it stronger. And so I pray that you would just guide us in our journey today through your word, and God, that for each one of us we'll have a take-home lesson or 2 or 3, some things that we can do differently to help strengthen our marriages. And God, we just ask you this, that by your Spirit you would touch each of our lives and hearts today. So speak through me. Lord, I yield myself to you, and just want to be your instrument here this morning or this afternoon. So we offer this up in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So let me get the marriage survey. How many of you have been married less than a year? Anybody? Anyone in here not married? Yes, less than a year. How long?
8 months.
8 months. Okay. How many of you, anyone not married but looking forward to being married? Okay. All right. How many of you married less than 5 years? Or between 1 and 5? All right, between 5 and 10. All right, between 10 and 15. Okay, between 15 and 20. Okay, I see you got some holdouts here, some long timers. How many between 20 and 25? Awesome. How many between 25 and 30? Oh, stand the man, holding out, man. How many between 30 and 35? All right. How many between 35 and 40? Anybody over 40? Did I see how many?
41.
41 years. Anybody more than 41 years? That's awesome. I love it. Well, guys, I want to start. I'm going to hit some verses here, and as a matter of fact, one of the things that I did, I got to keep one for myself. I made some handouts for you, so that'll help you with some note taking. But one of my favorite verses in God's Word is John 10:10. And John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly." So I got to stay close enough that I'm probably going to hurt you here with this board, so you might need to turn around. Let me ask you this. The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. So how is the thief? Who is the thief?
Satan.
Satan. How is Satan stealing, killing, and destroying marriages?
Deceit. Adultery.
All right, deceit, adultery,
Finances.
pornography, porn, busyness. Boy, that doesn't even look like busyness, does it? But you get it.
It's like
What'd you say?
busy.
Yeah, I'm too busy to even write it correctly. All right, we said divorce, You know what? It's when we say divorce, I don't even think it's just the act of divorce, but I think it's the fact that we live in a culture of divorce where that's a okay solution to a problem, to a challenge. What is that? Lack of commitment. Lack of commitment. What else? What else is stealing, killing, and destroying marriage? Communications, absolutely. Comms. You know, we could go on and list this. You know, there are some people who might even say kids are destroying marriages. Because a lot of times young couples, those kids come along and what happens to them? They begin to focus all their energy and effort and time on Sally and Phil, the little ones. And at the expense of their marriage. So the children may look like they're doing well, but the marriage begins to fail. And all the time that you're pouring energy and commitment into those kids and the marriage is starving, what's ultimately going to happen? The marriage will die. How many of you have seen that happen? Where the marriage gets starved and you think you're doing well by the kids, but divorce is horrible for kids. Don't believe what the secular media is going to tell you. Divorce is horrible for kids. So let me ask you this. We can stop with that, but I believe that God wants us to have an abundant life, and I think that applies to marriage too. So what does abundant marriage look like? What would that look like? If Jesus says, I've come to bring you abundant life, and that applies to your marriage, what does that look like?
New shoes.
What's that?
New shoes.
New shoes. All right, plenty of shoes. Now, okay, let's play off of that because I know that's a joke, but what, do some people think that there's abundance in marriage by abundance in things and stuff? Is that true? No. All right, so what else can we say for abundant marriage? Happiness.
Make time for each other.
Now, are we guaranteed happiness?
No.
All right. Wow, we're having some interesting challenges here. What else does abundant marriage look like? Trusting. Okay. What else?
Dating.
Oh, dating. Why is dating important?
Night out.
It's a night out. Yeah.
It's a reminder to your wife. Focus on the marriage.
It's a reminder to your wife that she's important. What?
Focus on the marriage.
Focusing on the marriage. Yeah. Okay. What else? What else does abundant marriage look like? Forgiveness.
Being able to compromise.
Compromise.
Humility.
Prayer. Humility.
Agape love.
Agape love, which means
Sacrificial love.
yeah, almost sacrificial love. It means some of those things. How many of you would say that abundant marriage equals abundant sex? We're at a men's conference, and I know how you guys think.
Yeah.
It does?
No argument here.
Depends on how old you are.
I could say so many things here, but we are being recorded. So, I love being with you guys. I will tell you a quick story, though. And I'm going to rail on some things that you guys may not like, so that's okay.
That's why we're here.
One of the driving stakes in the ground. One of the things that kind of gets me is when Stacy and our bed is a queen bed, and there are a couple of guys in here who have been in my Bible fellowship class that I teach all the time, and so you've heard me rail on this, but our bed is a queen bed, and anytime we go away and we end up staying in a room that's got a king-size bed, it takes me like a month to roll over in the bed and find her, and I'm thinking, holy cow, this is forever, you're way too far away. And so, you know what? I think we can get too far apart even while we sleep. I know when things are bitter between us, when we're not doing well, we're not communicating, I just confess to you, we don't always obey the whole idea of not going to bed without letting the sun go down in your anger, because the sun has gone down and come up and gone down and come up and gone down on our anger sometimes. But even when we get in bed, I can tell you that she wants to touch me and I want to touch her. Just if our legs are touching or something like that. So when you get this wide gulf with the king-size bed, that creates a problem for me. So I just offered you that to think about. I also think when you get a king-size bed and you put 2 dogs or 4 cats or something like that in it, or a couple of kids or a grandchild, you're breeding problems. Do you get what I'm saying? It's hard to do intimacy with a lab in the bed.
What a mental picture.
You got me? I'm just saying. I'll also tell you a couple. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'll also tell you a couple other things. The whole TV in the bedroom thing. Many of you have a tendency to watch Sports Center at night until you can't hold your eyes open anymore, or you watch Fox News. How many of you would identify with one of those things? Some of the others of you are afraid to admit it. But you will watch something until you can't stay awake, and there's no time for pillow talk. There's no time for conversation about the end of the day. And I can almost guarantee you that you're not going to go to sleep happy if you're watching Fox News. There's not much they're going to say that's making you feel better about going to bed at night. And my dear father-in-law told me when we first got married, he said, I don't like this whole TV in the bedroom thing. And I mean, he wasn't specifically saying, he just said, I just don't think it's a great idea. And this is my father-in-law now. Ed knows my father-in-law. My father-in-law says, as far as I'm concerned, the bedroom's for 2 things. One of them's sleeping and the other one ain't watching television. I have held on to that and I just love it. I just want you to know. So, as a matter of fact, here's where I'm going with the whole bed and being close together. My mother and father-in-law went to a marriage retreat. I can't believe I'm saying this. A marriage retreat not long ago. They've been married over 40 years. And we were talking to them about it, and someone said, well, why do you need to go to the marriage retreat? And they said, well, we can always work on our marriage. And they had it at the International Learning Center, which is a Baptist missions outpost in Hanover County where they train missionaries. That's where they did the marriage conference. They said the only thing is the accommodations were kind of hard because the rooms that they stayed in all had twin beds. And so it was kind of like Ricky and Lucy days or Dick Van Dyke where they're twin beds here. And so they said it was pretty tough, but we managed to do okay in a twin bed. So here's what I'm saying to you. After 40 years of marriage, 40 plus years of marriage, they still are working on their marriage, and they're still content with sleeping in a bed together. A small bed together. That's what they would rather do. And I think that's the type of intertwining that we want to see happen in our marriages because, boy, I believe that's hard for Satan to pull apart. You follow what I'm saying? If I were to say abundant marriage, if I were to give you a real definition of this, I would say it's choosing to do some things that are going to strengthen my marriage. Because not every day does my bride wake up feeling in love with me. She's told me that. You can ask her. She's right down the hall. She chooses. She will say sometimes when we're having trouble communicating, she will tell me, I'm choosing to love you today. And there are times when you need to do that as well because you're not going to feel in love. You've got to choose to do the right thing. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. So we need to do that. So God wants us to have an abundant marriage. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be soft and cuddly and it's going to produce everything you want. Some of it's going to be hard. But with God in the center of it, it's going to be exactly what He wants, and it's going to be the ultimate blessing in your life. So that's where we want to be. Are you cool with that? So let me talk about 2 pathways. How many of you have played a sport before? All right? Some of you played defense, some of you played offense. When I played high school football my senior year, I got a chance to play both ways. Went to a small school, so you had to play both ways. So if we fumbled and I happened to be on offense, then I stayed on the field and I played defense. Did that from time to time. But most of the time in football, a lot of times, you're 2 platooning, in and out. If you're on basketball, you're on offense in one court, defense on the other end of the court. There are some sports where you have to play offense and defense at the same time. And so what I'm presenting to you here is there are times when you need to defend your marriage and set up a boundary, but there are also times when you need to go on the offensive and you need to strengthen it. You need to put some points on the board because there's going to be a time when you're going to be losing ground. Everybody with me there? Have you had one of those days where you lost some ground and you wish you'd made some investments the day before? Yeah, it happens. So let's talk about defending your marriage against attacks. Now let me, you've got that there. The bottom line is you will be attacked. How many of you know that? Not only will your marriage be attacked, but you will be attacked personally by Satan who wants to disrupt everything about your life. I tell my kids all the time, I tell other people, God has a wonderful plan for my life and their lives. I tell my 12-year-old son, Ben, God's got a great plan for you, but you need to understand, son, Satan has a plan for you as well. And my prayer is that God will have more impact on you in helping you get to that plan, and I'll be part of that, than Satan will have an opportunity, so that Satan won't have an opportunity to get to you. But let's look at 1 Peter 5:8. Let's say that right? Yep. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a lion, a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. So, yeah, that's right on the paper there. Have you guys ever noticed Satan prowling around your marriage? Hanging around your house trying to devour your marriage?
Oh, yeah.
Chew it up?
Oh, yeah.
What does that look like?
It ain't pretty.
Yeah. All right, so how does he come after you?
Friends.
Through your friends?
Oh, yeah. So
How?
Don't do the yard right. Don't cut the grass right. Nobody else had that problem?
How does he come after you in your marriage, though? How does Satan come after you in your marriage? How? Yeah.
Getting the two of you to disagree, and,
Yeah.
and you know, those factions become worse and worse.
Yeah, driving a wedge, disagreement, yeah.
Pride. I think everything's rooted in pride and selfishness.
Absolutely. Are you a selfish guy? No, but my wife is. You're lying. You see a selfish guy in the mirror every day. Yeah, selfishness. He comes after us, trying to pull us apart.
Temptation.
Temptations?
Kids.
Absolutely.
Kids.
What?
Kids.
Kids can become part of the problem. You know, I talk about, one of the things that's kind of an interesting challenge for us in our culture is we talk about how busy we are. We talk and we celebrate busyness. And I'm not so sure that's a good idea. One of the things that we need to be doing as men, and I am needing to deal with this personally, is we need to slow our families down sometime and be together as a family. Because you can see Satan just loves to have us busy all the time, moving. No, we don't have time for that. We ain't got time for anything because we're going to this baseball game or that or that. And so we don't have time to be a family or to be a couple. Satan can come after us that way. And so we can come up with all kinds of ways. Satan can come up, you know, it was interesting, Pastor Simmons talking about his daughter and his son-in-law. Boy, does Satan ever manifest himself in your relationship with your in-laws?
I thought that's where he was standing
Is anyone anxious to ask Peter, why in the world did you heal your mother-in-law? I mean, I love my mother-in-law. It's an odd thing that the story in the Word that Peter healed his mother-in-law.
He was leaving with Jesus the next day.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. So, all right, we get this thing. Satan can come after us in all sorts of ways. So how do you protect against that? Well, I think there are two. Look, I forgot all about this crazy thing. Abundant marriage, offensive, defense, protecting, defend your marriage. So be sober-minded. How do you like the technology stuff? All right, so powerful assets to help us protect our marriage. I think there are a couple of things here. One is prayer. Man, prayer is the ultimate defense for everything. If we're going to defend against Satan, then there has to be prayer in it. And prayer is one of the things that many of us guys just run away from all the time. We'll do anything in the world other than pray. And again, I will tell you over and over again that I don't say anything up here as one who has got all this figured out. Because I'm just as convicted by what I'm telling you as you might be. Because we all can do better with this. I need to do a better job of praying with my wife. We do it, but we don't do it as consistently as we should. And I know it's one of the most important things that we can do. But I need to do a better job at that. I think the other thing that we can have in our lives that will help us is to have some other guys in our lives. Because if you aren't spending some time with a few other men that will help you watch out for blind spots, you are going to get eaten up. Satan is going to come after you. And guys, I will even say to you that this doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be a very well-structured meeting or anything that you have all the time. I meet with a couple of guys on Friday mornings at a Panera Bread at 6 o'clock in the morning, and all we do is check on with each other. We may talk about what did the pastor talk about the previous week. We may talk about what's going on with our kids. Sometimes we get into a Bible study. Sometimes we just talk about what we're dealing with. And I need those guys to say to me, hey, you're in a tough season right now with conference season. When was the last time you and Stacy went out for a date? How are you spending some personal time with her? Is your marriage healthy right now? I need some guys in my life to do that. And I'll tell you that if all of us had that, it would help us see things that we can't see by ourselves. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Let me also tell you why. I want you to look at this. Proverbs is written for the most part, by Solomon. And Proverbs 5, 6, and 7 talk about the seductive woman. Now, I don't have this on your thing, but you can turn here, and it's a warning against adultery and warning after warning to Solomon's sons about the traps that you can fall into that would destroy you from a sexual perspective, and for us who are married, it would destroy our marriages. Okay? So I want us to hang out for a few minutes on Proverbs 7. We're going to read this and actually talk about some things here. So, Proverbs 7. If you want to turn there, you can. My son, keep my words and treasure up my commandments with you. Keep my commandments and live. Keep my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call insight your intimate friend, to keep you from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words. Now listen to what this says. This is Solomon writing a story here, speaking to his sons. For at the window of my house I have looked through the lattice, and I have seen among the simple, I have perceived among the youths a young man lacking sense, passing along the street near her corner, taking a road to her house, in the twilight, in the evening, at the time of night and darkness. And behold, the woman meets him, dressed as a prostitute, wily of heart. She is loud and wayward. Her feet do not stay at home. Now in the street, now in the market, and at every corner she lies in wait. She seizes him and kisses him, and with bold face she says to him, I had to offer sacrifices, and today I've paid my vows. So now I have come out to meet you, to seek you eagerly, and I've found you. I'm going to stop there for just a moment. What do we see going on so far? Seduction?
Yeah.
All right, so whose fault is that? Go to the first part of this. Not the beginning of 7, but 6 says, for at the window of my house I've looked through the lattice, and I've seen among the simple, I've perceived among the youths a young man lacking sense. What do we see next? Passing along the street near her corner.
He's taking a stroll.
Taking the road to her house. In the twilight. In the evening. At the time of night and darkness. What'd you say?
Choosing.
He's choosing. What is he choosing to do?
To yield not to his temptation.
He is choosing to move to a place that's dangerous, isn't he? He's choosing to go somewhere where bad things could happen. Why is he doing that?
A desire.
Yeah, I think there is desire. I mean, let's admit that God has placed within us an appreciation for the female body. You agree with that? A desire for consummation of a relationship in sex. You agree with that? God's put a lot of things in us that He has given us for good, but are easily corrupted by the lion Satan who's roaring and looking and preying on us. But what I see in this situation right here, this young guy, did he need to be where he was?
It don't sound like it.
It don't sound like it. I'm with you. How many of us find ourselves, and you don't have to answer this question, let me ask you this. How many of you know someone who has been somewhere where he shouldn't have been and got in some trouble that he shouldn't have been in, and he could have stopped it all by making a decision not start in that direction? You've seen it. And it's the challenge is, there's a book by Andy Stanley called The Principle of the Path that says whatever path you're on is going to take you to a destination, And the challenge is many of us who are walking the path never pick our heads up to look where we're ultimately headed. But everybody else who's watching us walk that way can see, oh my gosh, he's headed for a train wreck. So part of what I think we've got to guard ourselves against, based on what Solomon's telling us in this Proverbs verse or passage, is there are places you just don't need to go. Are you with me? And so if you're going to protect your marriage, you need to decide for yourself, you know what, there are places I don't need to go. There are things I don't need to do. There are jokes or things I don't need to hear. There are shows I don't need to watch. So you and listen, you're grown men. I'm not going to be there to hold your hand. You need some other men around you that are going to help you with that, but some of that comes down to you deciding that I'm not going to do this. Driving a stake in the ground to say that, hey, I value my marriage too much. I value my purity too much. I value my relationship, my desire to honor God so much that I'm not even going to start in that direction. You with me? That might be your stake point right there. Let me hit this again. And behold, the woman meets him, dressed as a prostitute, wildly of heart. She's loud and wayward. Her feet do not stay at home. Now in the street, now in the market. At every corner she lies in wait. She seizes him and kisses him. And with bold face says to him, I had to offer sacrifice, and today I've paid my vows. So now I have come to meet you, to seek you eagerly. I have found you. What do we know about this woman? A couple of things. What?
Persistent.
She's persistent. What else? She knows what she wants. She's coming after him. Now, it's going to be hard. It will be hard for him to resist that, won't it?
Doesn't look like he's trying to resist it.
No, I don't think he is. But we live in a culture now where there are, especially young ladies. I look at what my son is dealing with and the way young ladies conduct themselves and how aggressive they are. And man, my boys have even got to be more on guard and more diligent in protecting themselves. Because this lady is pursuing. I think the other thing, it says she had to offer sacrifices. What else do we know about her?
She's trying to act religious, act like she has faith in the religion.
Yeah, I think she's a religious person.
Maybe she had some other event going on and she deviated.
We don't know. Maybe it kind of looks like she might have been to church, might have conducted a purification rite or something. I don't know. But now she's out on the hunt. And let me tell you something, guys. There are women who will be out on the hunt for you. Especially our younger guys. So you've got to protect your marriage by setting boundaries for those things. Look at this. So now I've come out to meet you, to seek you eagerly. I've found you. I've spread my couch with coverings, colored linens from Egyptian linen. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. You know what's interesting? Myrrh is actually a burial spice.
Imagine that.
So what is the foreshadowing there? Is she going to physically kill him? No, but he's going to die. He's going to die in this. Part of his spirit dies. Let us delight ourselves with love. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took a bag full of money with him. At full moon he will come home. With much seductive speech she persuades him, and with her smooth talk she compels him. All at once he follows her. As an ox goes to the slaughter, or a stag is caught fast till an arrow pierces its liver, as a bird rushes into a snare, he does not know that it will cost him his life. Now look at this. An ox going to slaughter, a stag caught until an arrow pierces his liver, and a bird rushes into a snare. What do you see about each one of those scenarios? Death and it's a trap. And I would say one other thing, they probably didn't see it coming. Because there are lots of guys who have found themselves in bad situations and they thought it will never happen to me. I'll never be so tempted that I can't say no. It's okay for me to go to these places and do these things because I'm so solid that it won't happen to me. You guys know anybody like that? That was their story?
That's not true.
Huh?
That's not true.
Oh, it's not true, but there are people who believe that, aren't there?
Pride.
And the moment that you begin to believe that, that's when the vulnerability starts, isn't it?
You
Yep.
get to a point of no return.
That's right. And now, O sons, listen to me and be attentive to the words of my mouth. Let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many a victim she has laid low, and all her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. This woman captures a lot of men and destroys a lot of marriages. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So let me ask you this. Guys who have been married less than a year, 5 to 10 years, 10 years plus, 20 years, what do you do to protect yourself, to put up some barriers, to keep this from being a story that's told about you? Because all of us could name someone that we know that's pretty close to us that their story mirrors this pretty closely.
Walk away.
I saw a hand over here. What do you do?
I think the problem is for a lot of males is they try to please themselves with just a visual aid. So mentally they tell themselves, well, I'll just look, which is the problem he had. He went around the corner assumptionally just to look to begin with, hoping that he would be pleased in the eye. But then, that's when sin is ultimately, the scripture says conceived. After conceived, it is given birth. Once given birth, sin leads to death. And so we can't conceive the sin until it's first been brought in.
That's right.
And so we look at it first, and then that's when the danger comes. So your question to how do we stay away from that? We just don't give it time to look at it.
That's right. Now, is that easy? No, it's not easy. It's not easy. All right, give me another one.
I've always held to the motto that if you go where trouble brews, trouble will find you.
All right, so stay out of trouble places.
Yeah.
He knew where she would be.
Right. That's
You
what he
know
told
where
us.
that kind of woman can be found.
Yep. All right, Dr. Gomes.
I would say, listen to those reservations that your wife is, or listen to the concerns that she has about women that you might be around or associated with.
Yeah.
I've discovered I can be ignorant sometimes. She sees more than I do.
Okay, women read each other better than we do, don't we?
That's all they do is read each other.
Yeah.
We only read the big print.
All right, so listen to what your wife says, because let me tell you something, guys. Part of this abundant marriage thing, we go back to that. If there's no trust, then you haven't got an abundant marriage. And if she doesn't trust you in a work environment or in another environment, then intimacy and everything else about marriage is hard. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, what else? What are some other ways to protect ourselves? Yeah.
When you are confronted with that brazen woman, you just walk away.
Yeah, walk away. As a matter of fact, the scripture says, what does the scripture say?
Flee.
Flee. Yeah. Get away. What else? Yeah.
Mr. Coleman talks about prayer.
Yeah.
When she walks by, pray, because that's the devil at work.
Yeah. Yeah, Satan's over there. Rawr!
Coming
I mean, it's
after you.
coming after you. Rich.
Protect your car. I'm in sales, and sometimes I have a chance where I'm gonna need to ride with somebody,
Yeah.
and I try as much as possible that if it's with a female, we'll meet at appointments rather than ride together.
Yeah. Hey, now that is not always and not every job you can do that, but I'm telling you to have that sort of barrier and protection makes an awful lot of sense. I got a buddy who hired a salesperson under him, and normally if it had been a guy, they would have ridden together to appointments, and he made a point to say, listen, I don't feel comfortable riding together with you, so it's going to cost the company some money, but we are going to drive separately as I train you on how to make these calls. I think that's prudent. It's hard, but it's prudent. Yes?
Well, sometimes you can't not look. Sometimes you can't just stay out of the troubled places. Ultimately, you have to think about what's lost. What would be lost if you act?
Consequences.
Yeah.
Then you gotta think about too, who you hang out with, and,
Yeah.
you know, if you're a married guy trying to keep your marriage square, you know, you got no business going up to some pub with a bunch of single buddies
Yeah.
and watch a ball game or something. It's not what married guys are supposed to.
Yeah.
Train yourself and discipline yourself to give off the right signals. My wife said she walked into school a number of years ago, and my daughter's Bible teacher was coming out, and he spoke to her, but he kept his eyes down. And she said she knew
Yeah.
he was disciplining himself not to
Wow.
let his eyes, and she got a strong appreciation point for that.
So discipline yourself for how you interact with others. I mean, these are great things, guys, and we need to be thinking this way. If we were to take this study of this, well, let's just do this. Because we could spend a good bit of time coming up with these things, and listen, this would be a great study if you were to get together with a group of guys from time to time. Man, you read this proverb and ask, how do we protect ourselves against that? And just add to this list. Now let me ask you this. Suppose you are this guy. Things haven't been well at home. Marriage is hard. Finances are tough. The kids are demanding. The boss is demanding. We haven't had sex in a while. I mean, I'll be raw and real with you. That's the type of story that I hear. And so there are lots of things that make guys vulnerable. So when a guy gets vulnerable and he finds himself following this path and he goes to the point of consummation, what can be lost? What are the consequences of this? Let's talk about consequences here for a minute. What's at stake?
Marriage.
Marriage. What else?
Fellowship.
Fellowship. What do you mean by that?
Fellowship with God.
Yep.
I guess if you've got kids, the generation after you. Right.
Yeah. Because what does the Bible say?
3 generations.
Three generations. Yeah, the generations. And again, I can't too much time. Again, I will say that culture is going to tell you that kids are resilient and they're not affected by divorce. But there are more and more and more studies coming out that are telling us, affirming to us that is a bold-faced lie and kids are damaged. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen this in writing, but I've heard several people say that the number one fear of middle school students is that they'll come home and hear that their parents are having a divorce. And the best thing that you can give your kids, if you want healthy kids, make sure your marriage is strong.
That's right.
Make sure your marriage is strong. And let them understand, I would say to this, make sure your kids understand that I don't care where they are, but there's somewhere behind mama in importance in your life. They need to understand that she is number 2 behind God. Patrick Morley says, after God, but before all others, your wife. Let me say that again, because that's a good little piece to remember. After God, but before all others, your wife. It's a great thing for men to remember. What else is at stake?
Your testimony.
Your testimony, yeah. Someone said disease. Finances.
Self-respect.
Self-respect.
Character.
How about your job? How about your standing in the community?
Why don't we just list everything?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. When you sit down across the table from a guy who's living in this nightmare, his comment will be, "I've lost everything."
Just like King David.
Yep, because you begin to add it all up, and it's more than I can even put a price tag on. And boy, that becomes a sobering thing. It's a great exercise for you and a couple of guys to do one morning, sitting over a cup of coffee. What are we going to do? Maybe you ask yourself this, what's at stake? What's at stake? How do you protect yourself? Now, I'm going to say something that is a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm going to say it anyway. My ministry assistant is Laurie Harrison. She's working in an office right over there, and her husband is sitting right back there. And my wife is sitting right out there. And I love Laurie Harrison to death. You guys wouldn't be here if it weren't for the work that Laurie Harrison pulls into this ministry. but I love my wife. I love her husband is sitting right there. Stan Harrison. So I stand here in front of you and say that my marriage is too valuable, and their marriage of 30 plus years is too valuable. When I hired Laurie Harrison to come in and work for Noble Warriors, my wife sat in the interview. Every time I've had an interview with someone who would be an assistant for me in my office, my wife has been in the interview beside me. And I realize that doesn't happen in every environment, but you got to understand a lot of times there are two people in our office, and it's me and Laurie Harrison. And I said early on, you're really cool, I appreciate you, but we're not going to lunch together. We've never been in a car together. There's a warehouse in the back of our office. I said, either you're in the warehouse or I'm in the warehouse. We're never in the warehouse together. We're not going to be in my office with the door closed, ever. Stan, the only time I remember hugging your wife was when I came to the hospital after her mom had fallen and was hurt. Maybe at a party or something, I don't know. But so this is awkward. It's probably awkward for Stan. I know it's awkward for me. It's awkward on the tape. But I want you to know that I've tried to make some choices. And I think it's the right thing to do. And I'll say to you guys that if I were to reach a point where I would think I couldn't be tempted to think thoughts and do things that I shouldn't be doing, boy, Satan's already got his claws on me at that point. Because the stories that you hear of pastors falling are guys, their testimony is, I didn't ever think it would happen to me. And so if you ever look at this and you say, that won't happen to me, you're fooling yourself. That's exactly right. And so part of this whole message and this challenge is, guys, I need you to think. Part of your driving a stake in the ground today may be, how am I going to, because I can look with confidence in my wife and tell her how much I love her and how much I appreciate Laurie Harrison. Because there's nothing there. So Stan, is it okay for me to say that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think
it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So guys, you may need to think about, what do I need to do to set up some boundaries? Because you want your bride to trust you. You want her to trust you. And you might have to work to do that. So, I just kind of throw all that out. That's on the decide how defending your marriage against attacks. But there's another side of this. I think you got to set up some boundaries, and that seems kind of hard and harsh and maybe stony a little bit. But I think there's a very fun side of this, and that is making your marriage as strong as it can possibly be. Because you wear a lot of equipment when you're playing football. Ed Gomes is a spiritual life coach for the Liberty Flames football team. He's in the weight room with the guys and on the sideline with the guys all the time. And those guys wear a lot of equipment to protect themselves from injury and everything. But one of the most important things that they can do to protect themselves from injury, what's another thing they can do, Ed?
be in shape.
Be in shape. Get strong. Every one of those guys has a responsibility to be in the weight room, pumping iron, getting stronger, making myself tougher, being able to explode off the ball faster, being able to respond more quickly, being able to hold my ground. And I've got to be strong to do that. So we're talking now about moving from defending to protecting, to being on offense, to adding points to the board. So I think the key verse here is 1 Peter 3:7. And this is one that you should have marked in your Bible. 1 Peter 3:7 says this. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. And boy, there's a lot there. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives. What's it say? In an understanding way. Now, this is the ESV. It's different in some other translations. What do you think that means?
Respect.
Maybe respect?
Humble yourself.
Humble yourself? Yeah.
The original terminology is knowledge, learning your spouse.
Yeah, learning your spouse. Learning her. Anything else that you can think of that comes across there? I think that's the key, learning her. Because, guys, you've got a responsibility to study her. I mean, if you stood before a congregation and the Lord and a pastor and said, till death do us part, you got a long time to live with her. And if you were too stubborn to begin to understand how she ticks and what makes her work and how she thinks, now really, I understand the complexities of what I'm asking you to do go way beyond any of our capacity to handle, okay? So I realize I'm asking you to go to places that, God help us, we've got to have him. Because they're wired so differently. But listen, here's the deal. It's been my experience that if we will make an effort to understand them and their uniquenesses and how God wired them and what really makes them feel loved and what gives them a desire to be our wives and to keep walking on a journey with us, then we've got to invest some time in learning who they are and how they function. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And there are some guys that say, well, hey, I told her I loved her when we got married, and that if anything changes, I guess I'll let her know. Man, you can starve a woman to death like that and then wonder why she doesn't love you back. That's how guys are. So I want you to know that this is doable. There are lots of guys that say, hey, I can't understand her. I don't know how she ticks, and I'm giving up. I've had guys do that. But man, I want you to walk out of here maybe seeing your wife as a mystery that you want to know the next chapter of. Maybe seeing her as a gift that God gives you that you get to unwrap and unwrap and unwrap and learn a new facet of over and over and over again. And never give up the excitement of figuring out those pieces. Because as soon as you get tired of that and give up on it, then things begin to go south. So I want you to keep doing that. As a matter of fact, I want to also that if we turn over to Ephesians 5, let me get there. This is Paul's encouragement to the church at Ephesus about marriage. Now, I'm not going to read the part, verse 22 starts with about wives submitting to your husbands as unto the Lord. I don't want you to go home with that in mind. Okay? I mean, that's because I talk to ladies a lot of times, and they struggle with submission, and as I look at the way their men conduct themselves, you'll understand it. And so, I think I'm not going to dabble around in that too much, but I'm going to tell you what I know about us guys, and we got a lot of responsibility on our shoulders to get this thing right. Because I think if she's going to submit in a godly way, then we have to be loving her in a way that honors God. Does that make sense?
Right.
So let's hang out. Ephesians 5:25 says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Right there. Loves your wives as Christ loved the church. What did Christ do for the church? Died for the church. Gave himself up. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you gave yourself up for your wife? When was the last time you gave yourself up for your wife? How do you give yourself up for your wife?
Do what she likes to do best.
Okay? So you do what she likes to do best. But you know what? Even in saying that, what do you have to know?
What she likes.
You got to know what she likes to do. You can't assume that she likes to go to gun shows. I mean, if she comes up with that idea, maybe that's okay, but you would not assume, sweetheart, I know you wanted to go to the gun show. Or, sweetheart, I know you wanted to watch the football game on Sunday afternoon. You may want to do that, but that doesn't mean she wants to. And I'm not saying that you can't do those things. I'm saying we need to know what makes her tick. You may hate to shop, but if your wife wants to go shopping and you can honor her by holding her purse or doing something while she looks at the racks, then for all, go do it. But it's hard. Let me tell you a quick story. I read somewhere that you can tell how long a couple's been married by how he carries the purse. Has anybody ever heard this? So the idea is that during the first year of marriage, he ain't even touching the thing. If they're out somewhere and she says, "Would you hold my purse?" Yeah, you just put it right there and I'll watch it. So those folks haven't been married for very long. But after about 4 or 5 years, if she says, "Will you hold my purse?" he will hold it way out here like this, so that everyone knows that he's uncomfortable with it. And this is not my purse. I'm holding it for her. And he'll tell everybody about that. That's after about 4 or 5 years. But after, there's some point, kind of magical point, after about 15 or so years, that he will get a little bit more comfortable with it, and he'll hold it down to his side. I mean, he's still kind of obscured a little bit if he's walking by somebody so they can't see it. But he at least will carry it a little bit more comfortably. Now then there's another point, and I'm not sure, a little bit later on, he will begin, if it's a shoulder strap, he'll just throw the thing right on his shoulder as he strolls through it. Or, if it's one of the short straps, he'll carry it right up on his arm just like this. Now that's the guy's been married for a while. Now after you've been married as long as this fellow has back here, 41 years, now when they're getting ready to go out on Saturday night, he will say to her, if he follows this pattern, "Sweetheart, what color purse are you carrying tonight? And I'll wear a pair of shoes and a belt to match it." So listen, that's a man who's sacrificing. He's taking one for the team right there. Now, I'm being facetious with that, but you get the idea. It's doing something that you would naturally be uncomfortable with, that she maybe wouldn't expect you to do, that says to her, "I love you." But you got to know her to know what that is. And so you got to study her and be willing to dig into that. Listen to this. That he might sanctify her. Jesus sanctifying the church, making the church pure. How are you making your wife pure? Having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. That's being in the Word with your wife. How are you engaging God's Word with your wife? That's a challenge right there. We have not only responsibility to disciple our kids, our closest neighbor is our wife. She sleeps beside you. Now, how are you washing her with the Word? Look at this. That he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. There's a translation that says without spot or wrinkle, stain or blemish. And so sometimes I'm reminded of that. How am I presenting my bride to myself without spot or wrinkle or stain or blemish? What can I do in her life to keep her from being spotted or wrinkled or stained or blemished? What can I do to make life better or easier for her? Man, I need to be thinking about those things. Had an interesting thing happen the other day. The kids have been playing in the playroom. I don't know if you guys have gotten into the Nerf gun thing, but our kids have got more Nerf guns than you can shake a stick at. And birthday parties and everything, just Nerf gun wars. And we had a bunch of kids over at the house, and so the playroom area, Nerf guns and darts and everything, hadn't gotten cleaned up. And my wife was having some ladies over the next morning for a little neighborhood Bible study that she leads. And I knew she wanted the playroom cleaned up, and the kids didn't get it done. So before I went to work the next morning, I went in there and spent 10 or 15 minutes just picking up stuff in the playroom because I knew it would be a blessing to her. And the funny story was, she came downstairs, because I leave before anybody else gets up. She came downstairs and noticed that the playroom was clean and thought that my 12-year-old son had done it the night before. Well, he didn't. But he had also come downstairs and noticed that the playroom had been clean, and he thought that she had done it so he wouldn't have to do it. So they're both thanking each other for cleaning up the playroom, and neither one of them had done it, and they finally decided that, well, Dad must have done it. And it was a great moment for both of them because, man, I was the hero. I invested 15 minutes picking up little foam darts, and I became a hero. Now, I don't do that every day, and that was a shining moment this week. But I'm just telling you that sometimes it can be simple things that become a blessing that you can do. You following with me? So what is it that you can do? Man, if your wife, listen, let me tell you something else. If I see any of y'all at a gas station sitting in the passenger seat and your wife is out pumping gas, man, I'm going to drag you out of the car. I cannot stand to see an able-bodied man sit in the vehicle while his wife is out pumping gas. I can't stand to see a teenage boy doing that. I taught my boys how to pump gas, and listen, what can you do to make life better or easier for her? Learn how to wash the dishes. Pick up your clothes. Vacuum. Man, you could do some simple things. If she loves flowers, stop at the grocery store and get her a $5 bouquet. You don't have to spend much. But the very thought, when she knows that you thought of her, man, you score points. Are you following me? Amen. Bring some beauty into her life. Figure that out.
Tell her how beautiful.
What's that? Tell her how beautiful she is. That's exactly right. Because body image and everything else for women today, it's hard. So affirm her. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound. I'm saying it refers to Christ and the church. And this is a key verse here. However, let each one of you love his wife as he does himself, and let his wife see that she respects her husband. Guys, I know that a lot of you are probably starving for respect. That's one of the guy's greatest needs. And so a lot of times when I talk to women, what I say is you've got to respect your husband. Now, they like to throw conditions on that and say, well, I would respect him if he would do anything respectable. Well, part of what I should challenge you to do is make sure you're living respectably. Now, that should not be based on condition. That's not how that verse is written. She should, according to Paul and the way that this is understood, that she needs to respect you for your authority in the home. But I'm telling you, you need to work on living respectably anyway. Because she watches your eyes as well. She knows what you're doing. She has an idea what you're thinking. So you might need to drive some stakes in the ground in that regard. So I want to share with you a couple of resources that I think are pretty cool. And one of them, how many of you have ever heard of the 5 love languages? Some of you have. I want to show you a little demonstration that I came up with that that's kind of interesting, because there are some simple things that you can do that will make life easier for you as a guy. The whole premise of the 5 love languages, if I don't create a mess here, I miss a great opportunity. The whole premise of the 5 love languages, and here's the men's version of the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman. The whole premise of the 5 love languages is that there is within every one of us a tank that needs to be filled with love. The challenge is guys like us want to just have a big old bucket of love and pour it in there all the time and keep her filled up. Now, the way God works is it doesn't work that way. Because you need to understand your wife. Because there are 5 love languages, according to Gary Chapman. This is not necessarily biblical, but I can find evidence of it in the Word. That's kind of how we operate with this. The 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. Now, the big deal is you probably speak one language very well, and that would be your primary love language, and that might be words of affirmation. And so when someone gives you a compliment, it may cause your heart to soar. Yeah, if you bring that up here, that'd be great. And so you may think, man, words of affirmation is where I live. I want to be affirmed all the time. And so you think that because words of affirmation is important to you, it's also important to your wife, so you give her a lot of compliments. Well, if words of affirmation is not her primary love language and quality time is, she really needs you to spend time with her. So I came up with this great way to help you see that, because if you keep giving her compliments on her cooking, and she may be a wonderful cook, if words of affirmation is not her primary love language, you're just putting little bits in her love tank. You follow what I'm saying? So you might compliment her and tell her she's beautiful, and she needs to hear those things. I'm not saying don't do that, but recognize that you need to understand her well enough to know what really is the way to get to her heart. Because if you can understand what is the way to get to her heart, let's say, and I'll use our example for this, my love language is words of affirmation. So I will delight in Stacy on the way home tonight, driving all the way from here to Richmond for 2.5 hours in Chesterfield. I will want her to tell me how great I did today. That will be important to me. But you know what she's going to want? She's a quality time person. So she's going to want me to spend time with her. Focus solely on her. Because if I will spend time with her, man, I begin to fill up her love tank quickly. I can't do that speaking the language that I like. You follow what I'm saying? I've got to do that speaking the language that is her primary love language. So I would say to you that one way you can begin to understand your wife is read or, thumb through. I know some of you guys don't want to read. That's okay. But at least skim the chapters, a couple in here, and understand the basics of what the love languages is. Man, let me tell you, you could rock your wife's world if you would say, hey, this goofball from Noble Warriors was talking about love languages today. And the key love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and gifts. Which one of those do you think might be your primary love language? And then you would score even more points if you would say, I was thinking about you on the way home, and I think the thing that I could do that speaks the most to you would be for me to do more around the house. Would that really speak love to you? Man, if you get into a conversation like that, what's going to happen to her love meter? Yeah, she's going to begin to see, hey, he's trying. He's trying to do 1 Peter 3:7 and live with me in an understanding way. Does that make sense?
Amen.
So, but guys, listen, I'm telling you, they are so complicated that you're not going to get this without being around some other guys who've walked further down the road, who've got some information that they can share with you. And so I would be involved with asking some other guys, reading some books. I'll also share this one with you. I think For Men Only by Shaunti Feldham, and there are copies of this out there on the book table. Insightful. It's a quick little read. As a matter of fact, the chapters are fairly short. You can read a lot of, I'll just say that how many of you have a reading room at your home? Tiny little room with a fan in it? You guys know what I'm talking about. You can read almost a whole chapter. So, and listen, I've got notes in here. Man, if you would just get one resource and begin to ask yourself, man, I want to learn more about how my wife works and how she thinks and how she operates, and begin to try and love her out of that new information, man, I think you would find that things would stir up. Would you agree with that? Yeah. Now, I'll also tell you that Shaunti Feldham is brilliant, because she's also written a book, she and her husband, called For Women Only, about men. Don't buy that one, okay? She understands pretty much how you take. But For Men Only, look at this. Inside the back cover, or the front cover, depends upon which one you get. There's a little Cliff Notes version right there, guys. You could buy this book today, read this evening, and you could be a hero tomorrow. Follow what I'm saying? So the big idea is, zero to hero in one day. The big idea is not just reading a book or having a resource, but it's being willing to invest some time in getting to know her better. That's what you need to do, because that's how you're going to strengthen your marriage. So on your little sheet, we're supposed to finish at 3:15, right? Yes. There's some other books, Rocking the Rolls, the Weekend to Remember Marriage Conference. You need to do things like that. Take the lead and schedule to go on a Weekend to Remember Marriage Conference. Or go to one of those conferences like my in-laws did and sleep on those twin beds. Get close together. It'll be good. So here's the thing. What will you do today, this week, this month, this year to defend your marriage? So how are you going to put some borders and some boundaries? How are you going to protect yourself from that wayward woman or from that temptation that may come your way? You know, part of it may be I'm going to establish some new policies about how I interact with women at work. Part of it may be I'm going to, you know, there's another book here. If you haven't read this, I'm actually reading it right now. Every Man's Battle. Because listen, I don't think any of us are exempted from our radar kind of going off ding, when a good-looking woman walks by. So we're attentive to that. But what do you do with that? What do you do in that situation? That's what Every Man's Battle is all about. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, I got a 17-year-old son. I gave him Every Young Man's Battle for Christmas, and I got a copy, and so he read it and I read it. Had some wonderful conversations. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, you know what, man, this goes into a lot of detail and is pretty clear. I said, man, I don't know if I want him thinking these things. And then I thought to myself, well, what was I thinking at 17? And I said, I was already thinking those things. So in some of our conversations, he said, Dad, it's clear that this guy's writing from a young man's perspective because I'm wondering, how does he know what I'm thinking? He almost exactly said that. He said, I can't believe he knows what I'm thinking. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that we've all thought it. So, but listen, to learn how to, there's a technique called bouncing your eyes because your radar goes off. I mean, you see, you notice, but what are you going to do? It's that split second when you can look away. That's right. What are you going to do? How are you going to look down? How are you going to protect what you see? Powerful stuff. And listen, I will tell you that if you begin to pay attention to some of these things, your wife will notice and she will love you all the more for that. You with me? Amen. So what are you going to do to defend your marriage? And then the second thing, what are you going to do to prepare for battle? What are you going to do to make your marriage stronger? So what can you do to advance? How can you learn her better? Would you be willing to read a book? Would you be willing to search the web and look for a podcast or go to Gary Chapman's website and listen to some stuff about the 5 love languages and say to your wife, I want to love you better this year than I did last year. Sweetheart, next spring, we're going to go to a Weekend to Remember Marriage conference. I'm putting it on the calendar now. I'm going to save the money. We're going to stay in the hotel. We're going to eat out. I want our marriage to be as strong as it possibly can be. Not just for this generation, but for the generations that follow. So what are you going to do? So I want you to take a few minutes, and it doesn't have to be all right now, but make yourself an action plan. This is what I'm going to do. So shoot some questions at me. We've got a few minutes, about 10 minutes or 8 minutes or so. Have you got questions or comments or thoughts about all of this? Is it landing? Is it helpful? You wish you'd gone somewhere else? It's okay. Yes.
What do you do when you don't have a babysitter or the money to get one?
Good question. I'll tell you about some couple things that we've done. Okay. At times, we have swapped babysitting with other couples. So Stacy was in a MOPS group, and so we would actually take our kids to someone else's house, and they would keep them one weekend or on Friday night, and then we would keep their kids on Saturday night so we had a date night so we didn't have to spend the money for the babysitting. I will also tell you that we have, when our kids were younger, now they stay up so stinking late, we just have to go to bed. But there were times when I could stop at, what was the big grocery store? U-Crops, and get a couple of eclairs or a piece of chocolate cheesecake and bring it home, and after the kids go to bed, I even sent her up one time. Let me tell you something. Oh my goodness. Young moms, how old are your kids?
9, 7, 4, and 20 months.
Okay. You can switch gears between being a father and a husband just like that. I mean, it's like downshifting from first to second. I mean, or downshifting from third to second, whatever. It takes a long time because she is mommy, 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 and that's all she's been all day. So I learned this from Shante Feldham. It took me forever, and I read this book, and it explained that. And so I learned this trick for her. If I would say, hey, let me put the kids to bed, and you go take a bath. Boy, that gave her some opportunity to shift gears from being their mom to my wife. And what you want is her in wife mode, not in mommy mode. and so there were times when I could stop and get some dessert, and then set up a or set up a card table in the family room and put 2 chairs there and a candle on it, and my goodness, you would think I had won the lottery. So you can manufacture a date night that doesn't cost much at all. Now, you can't do that all the time, I get that, but there are ways. There may be, some of you folks who have some gray hair, man, would you bless some other couples by keeping their kids so they could go out? Say, let us come over to your house and watch your kids and put them to bed, because we just like to bless. We don't want anything other than the privilege of investing in your family, because we want you guys to have a strong marriage. We want to come keep your kids so you can go out. There may be some seasoned folks in here that say, I could bless some marriages that way. Because I've lived through that. Because by the time you spend the money on the babysitter, you think, oh my gosh, I haven't got any money to do anything with. And you haven't got that money to begin with.
Value making.
What?
Value making.
There you go, straight. All right, what else? Any other questions or thoughts?
When the world. Sometimes you can do that through your Sunday school class.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, being connected to the local church is big time. Yep. What else? When the world
beats you up in the workplace and life and the economy and all that, and you know your wife is fearful and she wants you to be a man and to be her protector and provider, especially emotional protection. And you know you need to do it, and you know you're trying. How do you do a better job of that?
Wow. I don't know that I'm going to have good answers to everything, but we have lived through some of that. I mean, we started a ministry. My wife is still a stay-at-home mom for the most part. We live on one salary. I'm going to talk about this in a little while. If there's money in the account at the end of the month, I get a paycheck. That's how Noble Warriors works. And my wife is security conscious by nature, and she's an accountant by training. So I got it all going on, and part of it has just been us learning how to walk together in faith through some of those challenges, and me recognizing that security is a big issue for her, because I think sometimes I can drag her along and say, "Come on, honey, everything's going to be fine. We got it. It's just going to be okay." But she, I think, has responded to me acknowledging how critical this is for her, how much more challenging it is for her to be courageous and a risk taker. And so just for me to speak into that. Now, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think what I'm trying to get to is to make sure that you have a complete understanding of what it is that's frightening her, because there's some things that you can't change at all. I mean, you can't change the economy. And so how are you going to, if you can get to the real critical issue of what it is that's scaring her, or what she's apprehensive about, then maybe you can speak into that and grow into that together. Is that helpful?
Yes.
What else? Anybody? I'll take one more question. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily a question, just a comment.
Yeah.
I know how important it is. The value of being in the Word yourself. It's great to need to be in the Word with your spouse.
Yeah.
But my pastor's wife said that when they were getting married, he said, how are you going to submit to me? He was still in that selfish mode. How are you going to submit? She's like, I will have no problem submitting to you if I know you're submitting to Christ.
Yeah.
So it's great to be in the Word together. I think it's if not more so important to have your own personal quiet time that you're maintaining.
Yeah. I would just completely endorse that. 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, "Follow me as I follow the example of Christ." And I don't know if it's in this Bible, it might be in another, but I did this in my, this is a worthless marker here. I drew this. I'm great at stick figures. So I drew this stick figure thing in my Bible. And so here's what I drew.
Man, you are good.
I told you. I went to stick figure drawing school. So here's the way I drew this. If I'm standing up, submitting and looking at the Christ, follow me as I follow the example of Christ, then they wouldn't be able to see Christ, they would only be able to see me. If I were standing here in the way. And so I drew this as a reminder that they've got to see me submitted, they've got to see me in submission first, because they need to see that, but I think they also need to be able to see over my head. Now, is there anything, I don't know, some of you probably seminary folks and know better than I do if this is theologically sound, I don't know. But, I need my kids to be able to see me submitted and my wife to be able to see me submitted and how I live that out, because as they look beyond me, they should be able to see Christ as I'm submitting to that. Does that?
Yeah, it actually is biblical because we all know that Christ is our king. And whenever you were in the presence of a king, it was law that you had to hit your knees.
Yeah.
So this is how we teach our families, that before the presence of our king, we're on our knees.
It's Ephesians 5:21, in submission to one
Yeah,
another.
yeah. There you go. Well, listen, thanks, guys. We got 15 minutes to transition. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity we've had to just talk about your word here this morning and talk about some ways that we can drive a stake in the ground to defend our marriage, but also improve and protect our marriage by making it stronger. So, God, would you guide us and stir our hearts and call us to a point where we're willing to do that, and give us the right sort of ideas and thoughts to make this, to make a commitment to you, first of all, that our marriage is going to get stronger, and then to live that out so that our wives clearly see that we're setting some boundaries. We want to protect our marriage, but we want our marriage to be stronger because we're investing in them as well. So God, help us to do that, and we just pray that the glory from that will be yours. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right, guys, we're transitioning. Hey, these two books, I think, that I mentioned are on the book table. And guys, I've just had a great time with you, so thanks. If you want to reach me, my email address and my office phone number are at the top.
Good job.
Well, I trust this message has provided some practical encouragement for you on your journey with Christ. Please visit noblewarriors.org to learn more about how Noble Warriors works to help churches reach and build men. God bless you, friend.